Hi everyone, welcome to Step by Step Crafts with My Crafty Personality. It's Naomi. So today we're going to be working with resin and we're going to make a set of coasters. So for the materials you'll need your coaster molds. I got these on Amazon. You'll need a mixing container. I got this one from the Dollar Tree and it helps measure to make sure I'm getting equal parts of the resin. You'll need some plastic cups, so they sell silicone cups which are reusable. So you can separate your resin and color them. And it's easier to pour from those cups. You'll need some accents if you're putting any accents into your molds. So I'm going to be using silver flakes for this project. And you'll need your mica powder or whatever colorant you're going to use. I'm going to be using this pearl blue and I've already poured some into the cup. And then I have the empty one because I'm going to use clear in that one. A heating tool will help to remove bubbles. And then I just have some napkins and alcohol in case I need it later. I also have a roll of tape, which I use for prepping, and I'll show you now what I do to prep. To remove any little tiny dust particles that you don't want in your project, I take a little bit of tape and I remove any little dust particles that I see from the bottom of the mold so that they're not in your end project. And it's important to prepare and have everything ready because when you're working with resin, you have a limited amount of time depending on the brand and type of resin you're using to work with the resin before it hardens and it becomes unusable. So make sure you have everything ready beforehand. Okay. So now I'm going to pour my resin and mix it. So right now I'm using this Pujol brand from Amazon. Resin usually comes in part A and part B. The ones that I have purchased so far are 1-to-1 mixtures. So you pour equal parts. That's why I have the measuring container here so I know how much I'm pouring. Okay. So a cool trick to know how much each of these holds is you can pour water into them and then pour that into a container and see how much it is. The coasters that I use are about 5 inches across, and these usually hold about 100 to 120 mLs. So I'll be mixing a little bit over that to make sure that I have enough. Okay, so I'm going to pour some of the part A resin here, about 250. Perfect. And 250 of the hardener. And then you also need something to mix with. So I usually use popsicle sticks. They have different sizes depending on how big of a container you're mixing in. So now you have to start mixing for about 3 to 5 minutes. And you want to mix slowly to minimize the amount of bubbles that get produced. And let me just show you here. When you start mixing initially, you're going to get these swirls. It's like a clouded swirl look. And basically at the end of those 3 to 5 minutes, those should completely disappear once it's well mixed. If you undermix resin and don't make sure that it's completely mixed in, you can have issues later on with it not completely curing after it dries. You can have sticky spots on your projects. They might maintain bendy afterwards and won't completely harden. So this step, although sometimes annoying that you have to go slow and mix for so long, it seems like forever, it is very, very important. I have seen online that they sell some electric mixers that can do it for you, but I have not used those yet. Maybe I'll look into getting one soon. But for now, I just mix by hand. While you're mixing, you want to make sure that you're scraping the sides and the bottom so that you're getting all of that resin to mix very well. Again, slow is key to minimize the amount of bubbles. Okay, it's been about 5-6 minutes. And there's just a tiny bit more swirls that I see because I'm scraping the sides and the bottom. And then I should be completely mixed by then. I'll bring it up close to the camera now so you guys can see that there's no more of those swirls that I showed you at the beginning. And then when we're pouring into the smaller containers, while you're mixing, you're going to be mixing it more. And that'll just be better in the long run. Okay, let me show you guys. So you can see closely, now it looks completely clear and there's no swirls. So that's when you know that you're mixed very well. Sometimes, depending on how much you're making, if it's a small amount, it might take a little less time. If it's a big amount like this one, it takes a little bit more than the 3 to 5 minutes. Really just depends. But I really don't gauge on time as much as looking at it and making sure that there's no swirls in it. Perfect. Oh, a little bit more. I gathered from the side. Oh, I don't think I mentioned at the beginning, protective material, gloves, and a respirator to protect yourself. And if you have long sleeves, it's probably better. I just pull them up because I'm a little bit hot. Okay. So now I'm just going to pour into my smaller containers. This is just going to be my clear here. I'll pour some here into my blue. Now the amount of powder or colorant that you use is going to depend on what you're looking for in the final product of your project. If you put less, it's going to be kind of translucent and see-through, which is good if that's what you're looking for. If you put more, it'll just be a little bit deeper. So once I mix, I'll kind of see how much and how clear it is and how deep it is. And I'll decide if I need to add more. So for the silver flakes, I just put a little bit in a tiny cup. And I'm going to use this to just accent the center of these coasters. I'm going to put them in the center. So you want to mix just a little bit of resin in there and make sure you break it up. It's a little too thick for my liking. You don't want to put too much resin. Otherwise, it'll kind of flare out, unless that's the effect that you're looking for. I just want to put a little bit in the center of each coaster. So this is about the consistency that I like it. And I'm just mixing and breaking it up into smaller pieces. And then I'll put it in the center. And that's good for what I'm looking for. Okay, I'm just gonna set this to the side. I'm just gonna get some alcohol here and just wipe up the side of this. Just to keep the area somewhat clean. But this is messy, so that's why you're wearing protection. Okay. I think, just so you guys can see better, I'm going to move the coasters a little bit closer. And you can kind of see a little bit better. This is some old dry resin. You can just remove it from a silicone pad. I put a silicone pad underneath to protect the surface from the table underneath. And resin doesn't stick to it once it dries, so it's easy to clean and remove. So since I did touch them and move them, just gonna go over with a little bit of tape just to make sure that there's no little dust particles that collect and settle here. That one. I think that one had a little piece of glitter in it. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to mix my blue. So for this particular resin, I have about probably 30 to 40 minutes of working time. So you need to keep that in mind when you're working on your project. You don't want to pour too much at once and do too many projects at once. Otherwise, you'll run into the issue of your resin drying up. Not drying up, hardening up too fast. And then you'll just lose and waste all of that resin. Which, when you're beginning, it will happen. And that's just part of the learning process. Until you get familiar with the resin and how to use them. So this is how the blue looks. And if you pick it up like this, you kind of see it's a little translucent. Okay. I think I'm gonna add a little bit more blue. Just from my bag here. I'm going to do it on the side because when you open these bags, some of the little dust particles fly in the air, and I don't want it to get into my molds. Perfect. So I'm just going to mix a little bit more in. And if you don't have a heating tool, I have a blow torch and a mini heat gun that I use. If you don't have one available, one way to get rid of bubbles is to kind of let it sit and let them rise. After you mix it, let it sit and let it rise to the top, and the bubbles will pop on their own. But you do have to be careful with managing your time if you do that. And then once you pour too, the bubbles should rise, and you can use a little toothpick to pop them. And another thing that I've seen recommended, I haven't tried it yet though, is you get a little spritz bottle that has fine spritz of high concentrated alcohol, above 90% if you can, and just after the bubbles rise to the top, give it a little spray and it should pop the bubbles. Again, I have not tried that one, but I have read that it works well. Okay, so I'm just mixing here, and that's perfect. So my blue is mixed. I'm just gonna mix my clear a little bit. So if you look here, I don't know if you're gonna be able to tell, but a lot of the bubbles rose to the top. And they're popping. I'm just mixing. Just gonna move this out of the way. You do have to be careful with those flakes as well, because those fly everywhere, as you saw here. And I think we're good. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to begin pouring. And there's different ways to pour. There's different techniques depending on what effect you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first pour a lot of the blue around the edge of each coaster. Start here. And just make sure that there's a nice amount of the blue around each edge. Good. And the resin usually moves towards the center. So that's the effect that I'm kind of going for with this. Perfect. And now I'm going to pour a little bit of clear in the center of each one. And each one is going to be unique and different. As you saw, these pours are not perfect and they won't ever be. And that's the beauty of resin. Perfect. And then I'm going to do a little puddle technique for the rest of it. Pour some in the middle of each one. You can already see the beautiful effect that it's having when you're pouring in this puddle pattern. And then I'll put some clear in the middle of each one. I did sit down here just so I can see how much is in each mold and make sure I'm not overfilling the containers, the molds. Perfect. Okay, I need a little bit more clear in these back ones. It's easier for me to pour from here, so I'm just gonna pour it into here. So now what I do to clean this, I pour a little bit of alcohol in here, just a little bit, and I'll wipe it down right after while it's still a little wet with some paper towel, and that really helps save and not and I don't have to throw it away. And I can reuse them. Because that material is plastic and the resin does not easily come off of that if it hardens. All right. Perfect. These are all about even. And I'm going to just put a tiny bit of heat to them to get rid of those surface bubbles. Now with the heat gun, you want to do brief, small amounts of heat, because if you put too much heat around these edges, the silicone will melt into the resin and it'll stick and you won't be able to unmold it later on. So I got rid of most of the bubbles now. I'm going to put a little bit of the silver in the center of each one of these. Sometimes I wait a little bit longer before putting the silver in because sometimes it sinks to the bottom. But with this pattern, it's okay to put it right now because of the amount I'm putting and how concentrated it is right in the center. It makes just a thick enough layer for it to continue to show up top. This one needs a little bit more. Good. Oh, this one definitely needs a little more. There. And perfect. So now what you're going to see probably a little bit while I let more bubbles rise, and then I'll put a little bit of the heat to it again, is that the color just kind of trends towards the center. It makes that beautiful effect. So I did make some extra clear ones because I'm going to pour a top layer onto these that I made before. And while I'm doing this, those bubbles will be rising. I'll give it a little bit more heat and we should be all done. I'll cover them up and then unmold them probably in 12 to 18 hours, depending on how impatient I am. You want it to get hard enough to remove from the mold, or you can let it sit for a good 24 hours and they'll definitely be good to remove. You do want to get a container to cover your work while it's drying, so that none of the dust particles in the air you don't see fall onto your work during the very tacky, sticky process. And then your work won't be ruined, but you'll be able to see those. And if you're a little obsessive like me, it will bother you. Sometimes it's inevitable to get, 100% of them, but the large ones, I think, if you're careful enough, you should be able to avoid. This needs a little more here. Good. Tiny bit here. Okay, that's perfect for that. Okay, I'll get my heating tool again. A little bit of heat. And that's it. So I'm just gonna look carefully in the glare of the light to see if any little dust particles have fallen, and then I'll just pick them out with this toothpick. Let's see. Oh, there's a little one there. I wet the stick in between on a paper towel with a little bit of alcohol in the middle. Otherwise, you'll be getting the paper towel dust into your project. Look at how beautiful these are coming out. I love it. Okay. All right. I think done. Okay. Perfect. I'm just gonna move these over here. Dropped a little bit here. I'm gonna move these over so I can cover all of these together. They are looking gorgeous. Perfect. Oh, look. Awesome. Perfect. And now I'm going to cover it with this. And I'll let it dry and unmold it tomorrow. See you later. Hi everyone, so I'm back and I'm going to unmold the coasters that we made yesterday. It's been about 24 hours. And this is the first time that I'm uncovering them and looking at them. So some tricks to unmolding, depending on how long after you begin to remove the mold, you want to wear some type of gloves to protect yourself so that your fingerprints don't get onto your projects. It's been about 24 hours for these, so they shouldn't do that. But if you're unmolding early on, the resin might not be fully cured to the point where if you touch it with your fingers, you're going to get some fingerprints on it. So you want to wear some gloves to protect you from that. It's been 24 hours, so it shouldn't be an issue here, but I'm just going to wear them just in case. So to unmold, what I do is gently pull at the sides of the mold to remove it, and do that all the way around. And once I go all the way around, I start gently pulling back and removing it. Look at how beautiful that came out. I love the effects on how it kind of draws into the center, right into the silver foil that's in the middle. And this is how the back looks. Both sides are beautiful. I love how deep and rich the color came out on this too. Perfect. Okay, here's the next one. Look at that. Beautiful. And if you put it kind of towards the light, you can see it's a little see-through right in the center. Awesome. Love it. I really love this. Okay. So luckily, so far, none of these have stuck to the mold, meaning I didn't put too much heat on them while I was removing the bubbles. Amazing. I love how these came out. I'll put some final pictures at the end of the video so you guys can see. I also will probably put some silver along the edges, some shiny metallic silver along the edges, just to make it pop a little bit. Awesome. Perfect. All right, and that's it for the coasters. Stay tuned for the final pictures. Amazing.